First-time visitors to Taiwan are often surprised that contrary to the Chinese monoculture often depicted on TV and in tourism brochures, there is actually a rather sizable non-Han Chinese indigenous population on the island. In fact, those recognised as indigenous by the authorities, there are currently 16 different groups, make up around 2.5% of the island's total population, more than 500,000 people. Now, the reason many tourists are unaware of this is because the majority of indigenous people tend to live in remote and mountainous areas less frequented by short-term visitors. Indeed, the regions they inhabit in the past contributed to the terminology used to label them, either piqued plains or Xiangtianhu mountain people. Nowadays, the more politically correct term yuanzhumin or original inhabitants is used. However, even this term may not be completely appropriate, as there is strong evidence to suggest that another civilization was present in Taiwan long before the Austronesian-speaking groups widely recognised as the island's first people. Although information on this subject has been around for quite some time, it wasn't until my recent visit to Xiangtianhu here in Miaoli County, the home of the Saisayat indigenous group, that I started to look into it. Now, most people who've been in Taiwan for a while will probably have heard of the Saisayat and their Pastai, a ceremony held every 2 years to honour a tribe of small, dark-skinned people that used to live in this very region. Now, if you haven't heard of it and you'd like to find out more information, then you can watch my video on the subject here. Most Taiwanese find the story behind the Saisayat ceremony interesting, if not a little bit weird, but that's as far as it goes. But if you delve into the subject a little bit deeper, it becomes apparent that the various tribes, including the Saisayat, currently recognised as Taiwan's原住民, may not actually be so. You see, with just a bit of online research, it soon becomes apparent that it's not only the Saisayat who have traditional tales of dealings with these small people. The word negritos from the Spanish is used in academic papers on the subject to describe them, but from here on in, I'll use either short people or small, dark-skinned people. An academic study from 2015 stated that out of Taiwan's 16 officially recognised indigenous groups, a total of 15 of them had stories or legends in their oral histories about interactions with small, dark-skinned people. It found a total of 258 separate stories among the Taiwanese tribes, the only exception being the Tao people of Orchid Island, which kind of makes sense given its separation from the mainland. The fact that every indigenous group on mainland Taiwan have similar legends would seem to confirm the existence of the small people on the island in the past. These tales describe interactions with dark-skinned people of short stature with frizzy hair, living mainly in the forest and caves. Several of the tribes have similar stories about the origins of the food crops that they grow, and tell how their ancestors visited the small people in their caves and stole grain from them, hiding the grains inside their nether regions to smuggle out of the cave so that they could cultivate them themselves. A few tribes, including the Paiwan, Rukai and Puyuma, were friendly with their diminutive neighbours, even intermarrying and describing them as distant ancestors, while other groups such as the Atayal, Truku, Bunon and Tao people from here in Sun Moon Lake were sworn enemies and fought with them often. The Saisayat are unique in that although they ended up killing most of the Ta'ai tribe, they still honour their former neighbours with the biennial ceremony. Now that's probably because, despite harassing Saisayat women and putting a curse on the tribe following their deadly attack, the Saisayat still credit the small people with teaching them medicine, singing, dancing and many other important rituals. The Bunon and Tao legends, meanwhile, say that the short, dark-skinned people actually arrived in Taiwan before they did. Both Qing era and Japanese scholars did groundbreaking work collecting stories and legends about these mysterious little people, but perhaps the most interesting piece of evidence is a photo apparently taken in Taiwan during the Japanese colonial time, entitled Karanchin Tribe in Formosa. The photo seen here is often presented as evidence of the small people in Taiwan. It depicts three people, two elderly women and a young girl, and although their clothing appears to be that of the Bunan tribe, the people in the photo resemble the small, dark-skinned people of the legends, rather than the Bunan as we know them. This tallies with the opinion of experts, who have suggested that Taiwan's small people originally arrived here from the Philippines, although China and the Andaman Islands have also been posited as potential places of origin. However, it must be noted that Japanese scholars only recorded oral histories and never encountered any small, dark people. Therefore, the appearance of the people in this image could simply be an artifact of the way black and white photos distort and alter facial features and skin tones. Another interesting piece of evidence that supports the Philippines theory was a skeleton found in a cave on Taiwan's east coast back in the late 1980s. Back then, an archaeological dig in a cave located in Changong, Taidong County, turned up a skull and some bones. Known as the Xiaomar site, the skull found in the cave was stored away for almost 30 years before recent testing determined that it did indeed show a very close resemblance to the skulls of dark-skinned tribes from the Philippines. Dated at around 6,000 years old, this skull puts the small, dark-skinned people in Taiwan before the Austronesian-speaking indigenous groups we know today. However, it also raises the question of how these people came to be in Taiwan, as no land bridge between the island and mainland Asia existed during that time period. The most likely answer being they arrived via sea. This conclusion, arrived at from this evidence, would certainly throw a spanner into the works of Taiwan's long-established Sinocentric historical narrative, and may be one of the reasons why the skull was left unstudied for around 3 decades. Who can say? But even if the small, dark-skinned people arrived here earlier than the current Yuanjumin, they are still not the first humans to have resided in Taiwan, as evidence of other, even earlier civilizations has been found at several sites around the island, including at the Bashen Caves in Changbin, Taidong. So the question of who exactly were Taiwan's first inhabitants remains unanswered. Now, I'm not revealing any groundbreaking facts here, as all this information is widely available and has been for many years, but it certainly is interesting to me how supposed well-established history is never static and can change and evolve as research happens. And Taiwan's history is a fascinating topic and deserves a lot more attention going forward. And now for the disclaimer. I will freely admit that I am a complete novice on this subject, and this video is just the product of a few hours reading I've done about it. So if there are any experts out there or more knowledgeable people on this subject and I have got something wrong, then please feel free to correct me in the comments. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you found this kind of shallow dive into Taiwan's history interesting and maybe thought-provoking. If you did, you know what to do. Give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you'd like to help support the channel, then there's 3 ways. Thanks down below, buy me a coffee, or check out channel memberships. And yeah, see you next week. Take care. Over and out. Now, the reason many tourists Now, the reason many tourists are unaware of this is because the majority